British author Sir Terry Pratchett once wrote that no one is actually dead until the ripples that they cause in the world die away. But what does that look like in a time when we all create such large digital footprints? Well, that's what we're looking into in this week's Data Radio Show. Hello there and welcome to this week's Data Radio Show. Remember to hit that like button before we kick off and subscribe to the channel so you can get updates as we go along. And remember, if you want to dive deeper into data, we've got our Data Pro newsletter and school classrooms available completely free, and they're linked in the description down below as well. Mortality is something that we all need to grapple with, but for a lot of us, what that means for our data isn't really something that we consider. But our data will long outlive us. Today we're using Notebook LM to explore what the laws are around the world around our data after we pass, and how to plan for that event with a digital will and platform-specific legacy tools. So let's jump over, have a listen to the conversation, some really fascinating stuff in here.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex topics to give you the essential insights. Today we're tackling a question that's, it's becoming increasingly relevant in our digital age. What happens to your personal data? Your online presence after you die? Did you know estimates suggest we leave behind like over 1,000 digital accounts on average? And without a plan, most of them just become digital ghosts. It's this really complex blend of data protection, digital legacy, even succession law. And it varies significantly across continents. We've gone through quite a stack of sources here. We've looked at legal analyses like digital afterlife, data and legacy across continents, some practical guides, managing digital legacies, mastering your digital estate plan, and even stuff like post-mortem control of AI and biometric data. So our mission today is really to cut through the jargon, give you a clear understanding of the legal landscape, what the big tech companies are actually doing, and most importantly, what concrete steps you can take right now to manage your digital legacy.
Indeed. And it's definitely a space where the laws are still, rapidly evolving. They're playing catch up with technology. What's fascinating here, I think, is how these different legal philosophies, they intersect with the terms of service from global tech giants. And it creates this really intricate patchwork of rules. We'll explore some questions like, how do data protection laws even apply when someone passes? And what rights do relatives or executors truly have over a deceased person's data or, say, digital assets?
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's look at how different regions handle this digital afterlife.
Yeah. Because
it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Precisely. No, it really isn't. We'll start maybe with Europe, then hop over to the United States and finally touch on Australia. We'll note the specific legal frameworks, and there are often surprising gaps. So in Europe, the big one everyone talks about is GDPR, right? The General Data Protection Regulation.
Right.
Well, it explicitly does not apply to the personal data of deceased individuals. It says so right in Recital 27.
That's quite a carve-out, isn't it, for such a comprehensive data protection law? What's the thinking behind that? Is it just that rights end with the person, or is it seen as a gap?
That's a really perceptive question. Historically, privacy rights have generally been tied to living persons. The thinking is often that once someone's deceased, their personal rights, including privacy, they just cease. But this is exactly where individual member states can step in, and they often do. They fill that void with their own rules. For instance, France, their Data Protection Act lets individuals make post-mortem instructions for their data, their accounts.
Oh, okay.
So executors or heirs can request deletion or maybe access based on what the deceased wanted. Then you have Germany. There was a landmark ruling back in 2018, the Federal Court of Justice. They allowed heirs to access digital content like Facebook messages.
Wow.
Yeah, they treated them basically like physical letters under inheritance law, not data protection law at all.
Interesting way around it.
It is. And Italy and Spain, they also have mechanisms for heirs to exercise data rights or request deletion, but they need proof of a legal interest. So in practice, even though GDPR is silent, access often really depends heavily on, factors like whether there's a digital will, the heir's legal status, and crucially, those terms of service from platforms like Meta or Apple.
Okay, so switching continents.
Yeah.
Over the U.S., it's a completely different story, isn't it? There's no single federal law like GDPR doing the heavy lifting.
That's spot on. Yeah, no uniform federal post-mortem privacy right in the states. Protection basically hinges on this patchwork of state laws, general contract law, and, the often very powerful policies of the tech platforms themselves. The most significant state-level thing you'll probably encounter is the Revised Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act, RUFADAA.
RUFADAA, right.
Yeah, it's been adopted in over 45 states now.
Okay, RUFADAA sounds, promising. But does it really empower people, or are there still big limitations? Like, do tech companies still put up roadblocks?
It's definitely a step forward, but yeah, with caveats. RUFADAA lets executors or fiduciaries get limited access. We're talking emails, cloud files, that sort of thing.
Limited how?
Well, only if the deceased explicitly consented, like through a will or a trust or maybe an online tool, like Facebook's legacy contact. But the catch is there's still no general right to privacy or data control after death under it. And yeah, tech providers, they often remain quite restrictive. They frequently deny access unless there's a clear court order or if the user specifically pre-opted into their legacy settings.
So even with RUFADAA, you really need to plan ahead.
Exactly. That proactive planning is absolutely key.
And there's that crucial exception for health data you mentioned, like the digital HIPAA for the deceased.
Absolutely, yeah. Under HIPAA, health data is uniquely protected for 50 years after death. It's a real anomaly in this whole landscape.
Okay, so how does Australia fit into this global picture then? Is it more like Europe's state rules or the U.S.'s fragmented approach?
Australia's Privacy Act from 1988, well, much like the general spirit of GDPR, it mainly applies to living individuals.
Okay.
So there aren't really inherent rights to control personal data after death, unless some other specific law applies. Executors might get access, maybe under general property or inheritance law, or more commonly, if the platform's terms of service allow it. You see companies like Facebook and Google offering legacy options there too. But Apple, they're notably stricter. Often need court orders just for partial access.
So it's still developing there.
Very much so. Legal reform bodies have called for clearer rules, but yeah, comprehensive legislation is still developing.
So it really sounds like it boils down to this. Beyond the national laws, maybe even more than the laws sometimes, it's the tech companies themselves that hold the keys to our digital kingdoms. Let's get specific about what the major players allow, because this feels like where the rubber meets the digital road for most people.
Absolutely. Understanding these platform-specific policies is, well, it's crucial. They often dictate the practical reality of digital legacy much more than the broad legal frameworks do. Okay, let's start with Facebook or Meta now. Users can set up a legacy contact.
Right, I've heard of that.
This person can manage tribute posts on the profile once it's memorialized. They can update photos, respond to new friend requests, or, if that's the wish, request the account's complete deletion.
But they can't just log in and say, read your old private messages, can they? That seems like a really important line.
Precisely. No, that's a critical boundary they maintain. A legacy contact cannot log into the account. They can't read private messages or make new posts as the deceased.
Okay.
And if no legacy contact is set, immediate family can request deletion, but they'll need clear proof of death, like a death certificate. Now, Google, they offer a feature, I think it's quite thoughtful actually, called Inactive Account Manager.
Inactive Account Manager, okay.
Yeah, you can set it up so after a period of inactivity, you choose, say, 3 months or up to 18 months, it notifies trusted contacts you've picked. And then, depending on your settings, it can either share specific data, maybe emails or photos, or it can just request the whole account be deleted.
What if you didn't set that up?
Yeah.
And your family needs access? Is it a hassle?
It can be, yeah. Without that inactive account manager set up beforehand, family can still request closure or maybe data retrieval, but Google requires pretty robust proof. Proof of death, obviously, the death certificate, and very specific legal documents proving their authority, often a court order. They look at these requests really carefully, to protect the deceased's privacy.
Makes sense. What about Apple?
With Apple, well, since iOS 15.2, they also brought in a legacy contact feature. Similar idea.
Okay.
This contact needs a specific access key, which you get during the setup process, and they also need a copy of the death certificate later on.
And what can they actually get into once Apple approves it? Is it everything?
Not quite everything, but a lot. Upon approval, they can access data like photos, messages, notes, files stored in iCloud.
But what if there isn't a legacy contact set up? I've heard Apple can be notoriously difficult in those cases. Is that true?
That perception is largely accurate, yeah. Accessing data without a pre-designated legacy contact is exceptionally challenging with Apple. They typically demand a court order, and even with a court order, certain data like passwords stored in iCloud keychain Or licensed media like movies or music might still be restricted or just entirely denied. It's partly due to their encryption and licensing agreements.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. What about others like Twitter or Microsoft?
Right. For Twitter, or X as it's called now, immediate family can request account deactivation. Again, they need proof of death in their relationship. But notably, Twitter, or X, does not provide any access to the deceased's account or its content. It's purely about shutting it down.
Just deactivation.
It's deactivation. And Microsoft, they generally require a court order or subpoena to access services like Outlook.com email or OneDrive cloud storage. They're quite firm. They won't grant access without that proper legal documentation.
Okay. This next part is where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit sci-fi even. What happens to our AI-generated data and our unique biometric information, fingerprints, face scans once we're gone? This feels like truly new territory. The laws must be scrambling to catch up.
Oh, absolutely. This is a rapidly emerging legal and ethical frontier, and the treatment varies hugely by region, by the specific technology, and the context. Think about AI-generated data first. This includes, well, all the digital traces we leave that could be used to train or interact with AI.
Like what specifically?
Like your emails, voice notes you recorded, social media activity, maybe recorded calls, even your digital likeness if it's used for avatars or deepfakes, and definitely chat logs with AI agents. Legally speaking, GDPR, as we discussed, doesn't apply to deceased persons for this AI data either.
Right.
However, a deceased person's digital likeness, that could still be protected under things like image rights or intellectual property laws or maybe post-mortem publicity laws in certain countries. France, for example, with its post-mortem data directives, might cover some of this.
So theoretically, your digital twin could potentially live on, maybe even interact after you're gone.
Precisely. That's the direction things are heading. In the U.S., for instance, some states already protect a person's name, voice, and likeness, often for 70 to 100 years after death, though it's primarily aimed at public figures right now. But these AI-generated likenesses, they're raising brand new questions around intellectual property, even defamation. Australia currently has no clear framework for AI trained on a deceased person's data, or for using a posthumous chatbot or digital twin. And you actually have startups now, like Replica and Storyfile, offering AI chatbots that simulate deceased people.
Wow.
Yeah, it raises fundamental questions. Who owns these AI models? Can the heirs shut them down, or can they monetize them? These legal rights are, well, largely undefined or just inconsistent globally right now.
Okay, and what about the biometrics? Our fingerprints, facial scans, DNA, the stuff that unlocks our phones, our accounts.
Right, biometric data. It's stored in so many systems now, isn't it? Phones, laptops, medical devices, smart homes. While it's considered a special category under GDPR for living people, giving it extra protection, those protections generally end at death. Most EU member states don't provide specific post-mortem protection for biometrics, although medical records containing biometrics might still be protected under separate national health confidentiality laws. In the U.S., you have state laws like Illinois' BIPA addressing biometric privacy, but they don't explicitly spell out post-mortem rights. However, IIPA, again, provides that unique 50-year protection for health data, and that includes biometrics found in health records like DNA or medical scans. In Australia, biometric data is considered sensitive, but like elsewhere, its protection under the Privacy Act generally ends at death. DNA might get some cover via health records, but other biometrics, they might be accessible through other means.
So could someone actually unlock your phone with your finger after you're gone? It sounds a bit morbid, maybe like something out of a spy movie, but it's a real practical question, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And it's actually not that uncommon. Law enforcement or even next of kin in urgent situations might attempt to use a deceased person's fingerprint or face to unlock devices. Ethically, it's complex, right? Questions of consent, privacy, but practically. If the person is physically present shortly after passing, it can sometimes be done. For things like digital locks on doors or smart homes, gaining access post-mortem probably depends more on having backup passcodes or shared credentials rather than direct biometric use after death.
Okay, wow. This all sounds incredibly complex and, frankly, a little overwhelming. I'm starting to think my digital footprint might be heavier than my actual one. What's the bottom line for us, for you listening? How do we make sure our digital wishes are actually honored?
You're definitely not alone in feeling that way. It is complex. But the most important takeaway from all this really is the absolute necessity of proactive planning. Think of it like creating your digital blueprint for the future. Here are the essential steps, the best practices you can put in place right now. First, and this is absolutely paramount, Write a digital will. Be explicit. Specify exactly how you want your accounts and your data handled after you're gone. Second, inventory your digital assets. This is basically step one in that mastering your digital estate plan source. Document everything: email, social media, financial accounts, cloud storage, photos, even things like blogs or domain names if you have them.
Everything. That sounds like a lot.
It can be, but it's important. And for each item, decide, should it be deleted, memorialized, passed on, and if so, to whom? Focus on the sensitive and valuable assets first. Third, appoint a digital executor. Designate someone you trust deeply to manage or close your accounts, distribute any digital content according to your wishes. This role can be separate from your main legal executor, if that makes sense for you, but they will need proof of their authority. Fourth, and this is so crucial for practical access, securely store access information. Your digital executor is going to need passwords, those backup codes for two-factor authentication, PINs.
How do you do that safely?
Good question. Use password managers that have emergency access features, or encrypted digital vaults, even physical copies stored securely, like in a safe. But crucially, avoid putting passwords directly in your will. Wills often become public documents after probate.
Ah, right. Good point.
Instead, just reference a separate, secure document in your will, a document only your executor knows how to access. Fifth, document your wishes legally. Include provisions for your digital estate in your main will or trust. Grant clear legal access rights. You can use a separate letter of instruction for more informal details like login steps. Powers of attorney can also include digital access clauses for situations like incapacity. Sixth, review those platform-specific legacy tools. We talked about Google's Inactive Account Manager, Facebook's Legacy Contact, Apple's Legacy Contact. Actively use them. Enable these tools and make sure your digital executor knows you've done it and who they are. Seventh, review and update regularly. Your digital life isn't static, right? It evolves. So make it a habit. Review your plan maybe annually or after big life events, new job, marriage, moving. And just a few bonus tips. Try to use consistent usernames where possible. It helps. Export important content. You definitely want preserved photos, writing. Back up your cloud data locally sometimes. And always inform your key loved ones that this plan exists and where they or the executor can find it.
Okay, and specifically for that futuristic stuff, the AI and biometrics, any advice there?
Yes, definitely address it. Include specific instructions about biometric devices, phones, smart locks, any data you know might be used for training AI, and your digital likenesses. Put that in your digital estate plan. Consider explicitly opting out of AI voice or likeness training programs if you don't want your data used that way. And maybe add a specific clause in your will to either restrict or permit the use of your AI trainable data or your biometric identifiers after your death. Be explicit.
This deep dive has, wow, it's really revealed just how complex our digital footprint is becoming and how absolutely vital it is to actually plan for its future. From all those regional legal differences to the specific rules of tech giants and these rapidly emerging questions around AI and biometric data. Yeah, the digital afterlife is far from a simple switch off.
Indeed, it really isn't. But the biggest takeaway for you, for everyone listening, is the incredible power you have through proactive planning. Taking these steps now, which are relatively straightforward when you break them down, can prevent so much future confusion. It can alleviate a huge burden on your loved ones. And it truly helps ensure your digital legacy actually reflects your wishes.
So what does this all mean for your digital life as our lives become more and more intertwined with the digital realm? Will the very definition of legacy itself change? Will it come to encompass our digital echoes, our avatars, our data trails? What does it truly mean for society when aspects of someone's digital persona can persist or maybe even be recreated long after they're physically gone? Something to think about until our next deep dive.
Our digital legacies are going to become something that is a lot more prevalent in the future. Hopefully a long time in the future for all of us, but it's always prudent to be prepared. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Live long, prosper, be one with the Force, and I will catch you guys all next time.